this is something you just want to do on break?
The survival mechanism is great. It keeps us alive. We can have kids. We can raise them. We can keep our kids alive. Okay, but we're just going to be neurotic our whole life. You can be very neurotic and still pass on your genes. Look at the situation. And so this is something that actually goes a bit beyond that, and it does put you a little bit at risk. I think it's not the sort of thing that's evolutionarily stable mechanism. While in the long run it would make us much more mature individuals, in the short run it does, technically it puts us a little bit at risk. Okay, if we were to live in some unsafe environment, I do not recommend sitting and not knowing what the sounds are. You definitely want to know what they are.
But is that the sort of raw data point, was you consider that the absolute, and when you have a name and judging starts, that's the when the raw kicks in? Is it really kind of layered like that?
I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. It's absolute all the way down.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Lots of these people in this case.
Hi.
Rich, one of the things I like about what you're saying is, I think what I find challenging is if I try to solve something like my view of someone or my reaction to someone, and I try to solve it from basically who I presently am, it's pretty challenging because it's almost like if I could solve the problem, I would have already solved it, right? And what I like about what you're saying is your caveman approach basically is an innovative approach to get around yourself and see something freshly, right? And so when I see those times, I start sitting down and say, okay, and this can be with people, it can be any behavioral thing that I want to change. Is what's an innovative approach that gets beyond the way I normally would approach it. And that seems to bring a freshness. And I think the other thing I like about what you're saying is, when you were talking about the Sangha, I had not, I'm all new to this, so I didn't know that. I would have found it surprising if the Sangha in harmony or anything like that. But I think to approach it with an intent is also a positive. There's almost an intent with the Sangha. So, I want to face this creatively, but I also want to face it with some sort of intent. What do I want to create here? So, I want to take an innovative approach to how I create harmony in the song. That sort of thing. I find, so I like a lot of what you're saying. You're talking about very concrete actions that represent some spiritual principles I really like. Is that brown nosing?
Pardon?
Is that brown nosing?
Thought hadn't crossed my mind.
Oh, good.
I was just kind of like, oh yeah. But no, but what you bring up is kind of funny, because when I hear that I have an intent, when I talk about intent, it's also an agenda, which makes me more clumsy. Having an agenda, someone with an agenda is the kind of person you avoid. You just don't want to talk to them at bars. It's like, I know, Bush sucks. Just I don't want to hear it anymore, okay? And or they want to convince me of something. So like an agenda, I guess, would typically be someone who's a conspiracy theorist. And eventually in the conversation they will be clutching your throat, trying to get you to see their point of view. So when I think of agendas, I'm usually kind of a little bit leery, or intent. But approaching a situation without any intent, you're just kind of like, I don't know, you're just all over the place. It's kind of funny how there has to be a balance of the two. So for a long time I just didn't want to have an agenda, and it's like, just totally boring at parties, okay? And on the other side, if you do have an intent that you bring into a conversation, it can really cripple the flow of speaking and relating and all sorts of stuff like that. And it's funny how you really kind of have to have both there, each in their own measure, each varied according to circumstance. It's kind of funny, So that's just what I had to say about that. Yeah.
I feel like shikantaza helps a lot in
Uh-huh.
terms of not putting so much into the thoughts that you have. You
Mhm.
have the thoughts, but you see them as transparent, or it's not important, they're just something coming and going.
Mhm.
And like when you're meeting somebody and comes that feeling, this,
That feeling?
that bad feeling.
Bad feeling?
Some bad feeling
Okay.
about a person.
Uh-huh.
Can say, well, that's just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a thought. And then you can go beyond it.
Right.
And you can see through it and see, and then comes again another thought. Well, that's another thought.
Well, that's the nice thing about this practice. We can catch ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just a
It
thought.
gives a little space. It
Yeah.
gives a little space so that you can let go of that thought. That's just a thought. It's not important.
Do you know what hell is in when Dogen gives in Shobo Genzo and actually in Buddhist literature what hell is? Avicii, hell is no space. I mean, we always talk about the fire and brimstone and stuff like that and pitchforks, but for Dogen and Buddhist teaching, it's no space. Functioning in a frame of mind where there's just no shikantaza, and the thought that we have, we're so identified with it that we're just completely rattled by the whole situation. So that's the nice thing about shikantaza, as you say,
Yeah.
is when we learn that it's just a thought,
Yeah.
we can let it go, and that creates a little bit of space around the situation, and we can relate in a more human, alive manner. Okay? And to be perfectly honest, I mean, we're not really outside of that hell generally. Generally, we live in Avicii hell. Our minds are generally in a kind of frenzy, Have you ever desperately wanted to have something, you didn't really care if you got snagged or how much trouble you get into it, but you're just gonna go out there and you're gonna get it, right? Okay, because you want that, okay? Whatever it happens to be. We've all had that frame of mind, come on, we all know it. And it's a frenzy, okay? Because we're so captivated by it, we're so identified with what we want, we're gonna risk a whole reputation or whatever to get it, okay? Very often alcohol's involved, that'll help. But the funny thing is, if you just stop, it's like, oh, I don't really need that. And it's like, what was I thinking? It's kind of funny. And how that frame of mind is just fraught with, no space. There's absolutely no space, no freedom in it whatsoever. We're a complete slave to our own desires, to ourselves, really. And that's the kind of hole I'm trying to, or the rock I'm trying to climb out from under. And through doing shikantaza in a way of just releasing those thoughts, stop identifying with them, just allowing them to be and not kind of hold them down, but just stop identifying with them and they can just be what they are and they just dissipate of their own. And who cares? It's really no big deal after all. So yeah, that's the way I see this practice as freeing me. So that's the way I see that I am, and that's why I see what this practice can do. Both in shikantaza and in the more dualistic practices. So, okay? Can I go to bed now? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.